Hey, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of A Few Short Minutes, the pod, where I just want to remind you it takes literally a few short minutes a day to rewire your brain for a more positive life. Today, you see my beautiful two guest stars. Destiny Thomas is a prayerpist, and let me read you a little bit about what she says. So, she's known as the prayerpist. She assists high achievers with healing internally to avoid self-sabotage during elevation using a six-step journaling process known as Prayerpy. So you've got her and her beautiful little daughter with us. If you hear the baby, that's absolutely okay. I am a mom. Most of my listeners are parents of some sort, and so we love children here. And yeah, so if she's got stuff to say, she can absolutely contribute. Destiny, what is a prayerpy and what is a prayerpist? Introduce yourself and give us a little idea of what you mean by that.
Absolutely. And thank you so much, Stacey, for having me. Thank you for allowing me to still come with my baby. I truly appreciate it.
Of course.
So as you said, the Prayerpist is my stage name, but what I do is a process known as Prayerpy, a journaling process that came outside of one of the darkest moments in my life, which was infertility. So it's just kind of a full circle moment to even have her here with me.
Oh yeah, then absolutely she's allowed to come and scream her head off if she wants to. We're gonna celebrate that baby, no problem.
Thank you. But Prayerpy is a six-step process that doesn't necessarily teach you how to pray, but there's some key components in prayer that we miss out on, and it's a process that I went through that is an inner healing process to really get to the root of some things. So, for example, I knew I battled or dealt with rejection. I knew I dealt with abandonment issues. I knew I self-sabotage, and I didn't find out all these things until I was married and almost headed towards divorce because that little girl was starting to come up and I did not know that she was. And so during infertility, I started journaling because I like to express myself through written form. And being in church my entire life, we were taught you don't question God. And so I was in this really hard place because
You
I
were
was like,
questioning God.
yeah, right. Like, what's going on,
Right.
sir? And so that's how Prayerpy was birthed because I started kind of venting to God, and I realized He started to respond back. So it's an inner healing process that you go through that really shows you yourself, so that as you are elevating, those things don't begin to come up, and you begin to self-sabotage because you don't think you're deserving of those new things.
Yes. So you said some amazing stuff in there that I know absolutely 1000% to be true. And the first thing that really resonated with me is your inner child popping her little head up. Nothing triggers you faster than a romantic relationship and or having children.
Talk
Um,
about it.
yeah, so sorry, girlfriend, you're about to go through it again. But it's just a different level, right? It's a different level of elevation, or I absolutely prescribe it. That's not what I was trying to say. I absolutely, um, I say it is like an onion, and just another layer shedding off, another layer shedding off. And yeah, I've had some deep shedding in the last month for whatever reason. It's not fun. It's not fun, but necessary, or well, not necessary, because you could always stay the same person you are. And
Mhm,
I know people like that that are like, um, they've been in my life 10 plus years, and literally they are the same people, and that just
mhm,
blows me away.
mhm.
I do not want that for myself. I understand why people do stay there. I get it, but it boggles the mind a little bit when you look at somebody and you're like, you haven't changed a dang
Right.
thing and
Mhm.
in 10 plus years, and that is just how, like, you have to work hard to avoid that change. Um,
Really hard.
yeah, really hard in the self-sabotage space normally too. So what if you found out about self-sabotage as a whole and then your self-sabotage in particular?
I found out, I found that self-sabotaging is really like the biggest, um, liar, right? It's constant. It's a small voice that constantly tells you you're not enough. That they can find somebody better. If you were talking about relationships, if you're a parent, it's a small voice that is constantly telling you you're doing a terrible job. It's mom guilt, right? And when it comes to your workplace, it's you got to work harder. That's not enough. They're gonna pick somebody over you. That's what self sabotage is. In my life personally, um, in marriage and parenthood, self sabotage has been those voices, but it's me constantly um surrendering to that voice and saying, you know what, you're right. So let me just quit. Or you know what, it's not worth fighting for. It's not worth, over explaining myself or communicating what I actually am feeling. If that's what they believe about me, that's what they believe. Not realizing that people don't read our minds. Communication truly is key. And so I've the way to work around that I've learned is to do a lot of probing and a lot of clarifying. So just to clarify, what you're saying is right, because self sabotage will tell you they're saying something completely opposite of what they're actually saying. So those are some things that have been uh, revelatory to me.
Yeah, absolutely. Self-sabotage, my friends, is a control game.
hmm
It's a control game. It's very much, I'm going to get myself before life can get me.
Yep,
And so if I ruin my own life, at least I'm ruining it on my time scale, on my scale, when I say, how I say, where I say, versus life coming at me and maybe something blowing up outside of my control. And so it is actually one of the worst traits to allow to stick around in your life, because you will never, ever move forward. You will be that same person 10 years later because of your self sabotage. And so it is an effort to keep you um, in the know, because if you are controlling it and you are creating havoc in your life, at least you know when it's coming, at least you know what it feels like, at least you know all of that stuff. And so it is one of the worst control mechanisms that you can keep around for yourself, because normally you don't know that you're doing it. You don't know what you're doing it, but subconsciously that's why you're doing it, because anything outside of things that you don't know is really scary. So if I can absolutely blow up my life under my own terms, that's not as scary, which isn't true, by the way. That's just a lie that we tell ourselves to make it okay. It isn't true. And so does that resonate with you? Do you see places that you were like, oh, I feel out of control, so let me just kind of absolutely blow up my life because at least I'm doing it?
absolutely. And that is really where self sabotage or any of those things come from. It's from control. It's from being a child and realizing or looking at things from your childhood that you have internalized. If you were in control, you would have had a different outcome. And so that's when you start to control your life in any way you see fit and try to control other people's life, if we be honest. So yeah, definitely that was me and I was it. And so it was really dealing with the mindset necessary and doing the inner work necessary to say, okay, because a saying I have is the only difference between a healed person and an unhealed person is the decision, right? It's a decision. When this situation is going on, who am I deciding to show up as? Am I going to show up as the healed version of destiny or the unhealed version, right? And that, because like you said, there's some people who have never changed just because they keep deciding to revert to the same old behavior. And so, yeah, it really is that decision that changes the outcome, I guess.
Do you remember the day that you made that decision, or around the time period? What was life like when you made that decision of like, I'm not doing this again? Subconsciously, like unconsciously, I'm going to move forward, heal. That doesn't say that, y'all. That doesn't mean she stayed healed. It doesn't mean that she operated always as healed destiny. None of us do that. We always revert, we always regress, but it's the amount of time that we stay in that regression that makes the difference. So do you remember that day where you were like, this isn't working and something's got to give?
It was. I was in a Prayerpy session or a journaling session, and the question that got posed to me was, "I thought you said you didn't want to be divorced," and I was like,
Oh.
I guess you're right, So
All right,
it
then.
was that question that said, okay, like if that is the outcome or the goal that I'm setting, I'm gonna have to change because that's the direction I'm heading right now, with infertility and choosing not to communicate and shut down and all those things. And so that was the question that really was like, okay, Destiny, what are you gonna do? You like challenges. This is a challenge. What are you gonna do with this challenge?
Yeah, absolutely. I love that you brought that up because yes, if you are a competitive person, if you like challenges, if you like puzzles, if you like figuring things out, healing, that's like the biggest puzzle, figure out competitive challenge you will ever face. And the only person you are competing with is your previous self, which is actually one of the hardest competitors you will ever have. So yeah, if you like a challenge, healing's definitely a challenge for sure. Where was your partner in all of this? What were they saying? Like, what was life like when you had that question of like, oh, I thought you said you didn't want to be divorced.
So my
Um,
husband, what I loved about my husband, even when we were dating, is we both had this like determined mindset. Like if we put our minds to it, we were going to conquer it together. But he used to always say this something to me, and I used to get irritated if I be honest. But he used to say, "Destiny, you said that you want to be the generational curse breaker, and you don't want the marriage that you saw your mom have." However, you were because my mom was super independent, super, and he was like, however, you refuse to allow me to lead. Even if I'm wrong, you can't let me be right. And I was like, who would do that? That's the craziest thing I've ever heard. Why would I let
what?
you be right if you're wrong?
No.
And he would say it over and over again. And it would like have me super perplexed, like, but who in the right mind would do that? Like, who in their right mind would do that? But then, after I let it sit and, like I said, begin to really look at myself, I understood what he was saying. It wasn't necessarily letting him be wrong, but it was trusting me as the leader, meaning I'm just as imperfect as you are. I may get it wrong sometimes, but if you don't believe that I'm trying to lead you off the cliff, why won't you just trust me to follow me? Right. And so that's where he was during that process. It was kind of like, listen, I'm giving you something to work with. Give me something to work with, because he was very intentional about over communicating, saying, hey, this is not working for me. But I would always say when you're dating, it's like rainbows and butterflies. But when you get married or in a committed relationship, it's like this switch goes off that says everything you're doing, they're looking for a way to leave you. They're looking like, but that's trauma, right? But and so that is what was happening. Like we had built our relationship off of over communicating, being each other's best friend, and then I had got to this place where I just wasn't there anymore. And so that's where he was trying to push me into becoming my best self.
It's fascinating that you were there and then you weren't. And did you realize that the switch had been thrown in you, or did you think it was the relationship at first?
I thought it was him. I used to say all the time, he's the problem. He's too direct. My husband's from the Bronx, so I would say he's all chase, no, all shot, no chase, right? But I used to say it was him. It's how you saying it. I can't receive it because of how you're saying it. And that honestly built a wall in him, because it was me saying I couldn't receive him, even though that's what made me attracted to him, that he was super honest, super communicative, right? But once again, when those roles change from him just being my friend to now someone I'm in love with and wanting to build a future with, that different rejection hat comes on, because now it's that little girl that says all the people I've had in an intimate setting end up leaving me, right? Versus a friend who you can come as you go, you can, so that was a really big thing.
Yeah, that's fascinating. You guys, oh, sorry, ADHD. Hang on. Brain catching up. Where did I go with that? It's fascinating that you made that delineation. As a friend, they're allowed to flow in and flow out. That's friendship. I don't talk to some of my best friends for months at a time, and then we pick up the phone and we spend 2 hours and we catch up and we're good, and then it's months again. And that's just kind of adult friendship. Is it ideal? No, it's not ideal. But is it how it is? Yeah. It is. But when you change that label suddenly and you become more vulnerable, which I actually submit doesn't happen any more or any less with a friend than it does an intimate partner. Um, so interesting that that kind of label, right, for you was like, oh, now that he's, somebody intimate with me, that means he's going to hurt me. Where as a friend, he really could have. He could have. But, for you, you weren't scared until you saw that repeating that opportunity to repeat the pattern, right? And it's not something that you consciously chose of like, oh, intimate partner, let me do what my mom always did or what I know to be true about my previous, lives. But here it is. And so automatically, let me screw things up so I'm in control of when he leaves. He doesn't just leave me.
And I think a big part that played in that role labels was your trauma, right? So my mom was always in my life. So my relationship with women or friends, because I had a mainly, female friends, was they kind of, even though I'm not perfect, they'll tolerate me or will be able to get past it. Whereas growing up, my father wasn't around. And so when it came to men or male relationships, it was that more of fear or fright that they will leave. And that if I say the wrong thing or if I do the wrong thing, that's all it takes and they'll leave. So yeah, that was a big part of it.
Yeah, and I find that fascinating because that plays into the um the destiny that was all love and rainbows and carefree, right? Because you were performative. You were being performative. You're like, "Oh, this guy, he's going to go if I don't do XYZ." And I absolutely understand that because that has been my intimate relationships of like, "Oh, I've got to be fun and carefree, Stacy, otherwise he's not going to like me." And then when, the wildness settled and we got into a rhythm and I wasn't wild and carefree anymore, suddenly the last partner that I'm speaking about looked at me and he was like, where's that girl? Where'd she go? And it's like, well, I'm freaking tired because I've been performing for all these months and I couldn't keep it up. And I
Yeah.
didn't realize that's what I was doing for like, I mean, years down the line, y'all. Years down the line. I didn't know that that's what I was doing. It sounds like maybe you were doing the same thing.
Yes, and that's why infertility was such a big thing because with performing, you have ways of kind of overcompensating. But infertility was kind of something that the doctor at the time made so permanent. So now I have you as my husband, and these people are saying I can't give you something that we already discussed we wanted. So it's like I can't even overperform this. Like there's no magic I can do in this in this situation. And so that's what kind of had that performance wall kind of starting to break down, and I literally felt like I was losing control. So it's like, okay, let me self-sabotage this and make him leave before he realizes I'm not all that I, drew myself out to be. So yeah, yeah.
Yeah. I'm sure you felt like, I'm sure you felt on some levels that you lied to him.
Mhm.
Yeah, I'm sure you felt that, which isn't true. It isn't true. You didn't know, but I'm sure because we love to beat ourselves up.
Mhm.
Because it's easier for us to do it than again to take it in from somebody that we love and care about, right? So if we do
Yeah.
it to ourselves and we say the worst things to ourselves, then nobody can hurt us past that because we just hurt the crap out of ourselves. And
Yeah.
so, what are some of the things that you said about yourself that you now know isn't true during that time?
Um, that I definitely lied to him. And to make things even worse, my husband is was the only child to his father that is deceased. So this is the man who's going to carry this legacy, right? So it's like his whole
Yeah.
story. You sold him this dream that you do want to have kids, and now they're telling you can't do that, right? So you're a liar. You manipulated him. You manipulated this whole situation because we also got married in less than a year of dating, right? So you didn't even give him enough time. You could have found this out before marrying him. Um, that was some things, and then I'm trying to think. You don't take care of yourself the way you said you did, because that was something I prided myself in back then, of really being healthy and taking care of myself. Um, that I'm broken. That was a big thing that would
I'm
play a
sure.
lot. Um, um, that my body hated me. That was one thing that I used to tell myself a lot. Um, that I wasn't worth loving because I couldn't give a child, because I couldn't give him a child. Yeah, those are probably some of the worst things I've said.
And I think from what I know of friends that and family that struggle with infertility, there's this attack against womanhood,
Mhm.
right? And so if you can't be a mother,
Mhm.
are you a full woman? Are you just half? You know what I
Mhm.
mean? And I know a lot of friends struggled with that kind of thing about themselves, that lie that they were telling themselves of like, oh, I'm not a full woman. I'm not full, like, there's something broken. And I'm
Mhm.
sure with your relationship with God at the time, you probably weren't trusting him. You were
At
probably
all.
like, what? WTF? Or, is this payment for me being XYZ in my previous,
Yeah.
years? And I know, or like, oh, so you're telling me I'm going to be a terrible mother, that and so that's why you're not giving me a child. I mean, there are a number of narratives, I'm sure, that ran through your mind at some point in time. How did you deal with that before you knew about this process? You developed this process? How did that come to be?
Yeah, so it started with as I said a little bit earlier, it started with me just picking up pen and paper and kind of finding a way to cope with my feelings, because it had got really bad. I was on so many hormone medicines and like just really in a very depressive state. And so I was like, I gotta figure something out. And I was like, even though I was taught you don't question God, maybe if I'm writing out the questions to him, it's not the same, right? And so I literally begin to just write out these questions and say, like, why do you hate me so much? Like, I did it the quote unquote right way, and this is how I'm repaid. Like, I just was like literally just venting all of my emotions out. And I had did that for months. And then one day I felt this unction to write GS, like G as in golf, S as in Sam, and keep writing. And I did that for probably 2 weeks, and then one day I felt this unction to go back and read all the GSs after I was venting. And I went back and I read them and I was like, oh my gosh, God's responding to me. Like, literally what I'm saying, there's a response. Like, oh my God. So then I was like, okay, let me try it again. And so that's how the process started, with me just venting and realizing he was actually responding to me. And then in that, I was like, okay, now I'm about to pull out the cards of questions, since like there's really interest. And one of my questions was like, I've been in this for 3 years and I feel like you are like ignoring me. Like, I've paid all the money, I've done all, like, what is happening? Um, and he said a lot, but a couple things he said was, "You weren't praying at all. You were just venting. You never were quiet enough to hear me actually speak back to you." The other thing was, "Destiny, this is bigger than you. Motherhood is bigger than you and your own selfish reasoning for wanting it. There's some work I need to do in you." And that's when he started to do the more Prayerpy process, where he started to show me. And he was like, let me identify for you the seed of rejection and where it was planted. Let me show you how it's the pattern in your life. Let me show you, like, so yeah, so that's how it was developed. But at the time, even with all of that, I thought it was something just for me. And so I used it to, like, vent and talk to God, and for him to talk back to me, and for me to deal with those deep rooted things inside of me. And then October 2017, well, before October 2017, he, using that process, he instructed me to leave my corporate job. And that's when it came all of this. But yes, that's how it started.
Yeah, I want to know about your past. How did you get to this point where you have, do you identify as a coach? Is that kind of what your label is, or what do you say about? I mean, a prayerpist, obviously, but
Yes, I'm considered
obviously.
a prayer and discernment coach.
Okay, fantastic. So, did you always want to do this? What were you
No,
doing in corporate world?
no.
Talk about that kind of evolution too, because it's fascinating. There's two camps that I see, and one is like I always knew I wanted to create impact with people. I just didn't know how, so they become therapists and coaches and consultants and, ministers and whatever. And then there's this other group of people who didn't have it but was like led to it in some, or didn't have that that innate need, but they were led to it through a series of life circumstances. And you sound like you fall into the latter. So what was life like before you discovered this Prayerpy?
So growing up, I always wanted to be a teacher, a childcare teacher. I went and got
Okay.
early childhood, but then I graduated high school and I had gotten feedback from my parents where they were like, I think the best choice would be to go into corporate and then go to school that way. And so I actually worked in the insurance industry for 10 years and I moved up the corporate ladder. I was actually on track to do supervision and management in there. And then struggled with infertility. That had me kind of off my post for a while in work, where I kind of just stayed and try to deal with that. But then in about June, July of 2017, using this process, that's when the Lord began to tell me He was preparing me for something that required a level of faith I wasn't used to. And He led me out of corporate America. And that story in itself is wild, but He told me to leave. And I did. But that's because this is actually my third and final baby. I have my first child after infertility, where I had him. And when I had him, I was instructed to go back to work part-time. But I didn't, out of fear, because I was like, where am I going to go? These people pay me really good money. I don't have a degree. And so I
Yeah.
ignored it. But the warfare and the mental attack after not obeying was crazy. And so this time when He said to leave, I was like, I'm not even going to test it. I'm just going to leave. So I left, and the only instruction I got after leaving was, I want you to write a book about your infertility journey, and I want you to start going live on Facebook and praying for my people. And I was like, what? And so I
Had you
started.
ever wanted to write a book? Was that ever in your like, no?
No, nobody in my family has ever written a book. No. And
Yeah.
I was like, where do I even start? And so I literally, a slogan or motto that I've always used was, God, if this is something you really want me to do, just show me how. And I said it, and then I connected with this lady in a Facebook group the next day, and she literally sent me voice memos of the whole process of writing a book. And I was like, okay. And
I
so I
guess that's
started.
it.
And look, and she created the cover for the book and everything. So it was amazing. And so, but I was like, you want me to tell my story? Because it's some really hard, like, because what people don't realize when you go through infertility, a lot of it you're not really dealing with and coping with in the moment. You're just kind of get through it. And so to write the book, I had to go back and live through some moments that I actually didn't live through. So it was very
Yeah.
painful. Um, and then going live on Facebook and praying for people. I was like, okay, what does that look like? I was in network marketing before with my insurance job. So I lost some followers for that. So I'm like, now you want me to go in here praying for people? Like, okay. And it was at like 10 o'clock at night. And so I was like, I could have kept my job for this. I worked 8 to 4:30, but I'm not gonna question it. We're here now. So I started going live and praying for people. And it started with like a couple of people, and then it just like grew really fast. And I mean, people from all over the world, like England and just all over the world, were coming on, and they were bringing family members. And quite a few people were messaging me after, and they were like, oh my gosh, like, how did you know what was in my journal from today? And I was like, I don't know what you're talking about. I was like, I just hear what he's saying and I just repeat it. And so I had one lady, and I love her to life. She messaged me and she said, you literally just read my journal. I need you to teach me how you heard from God like that. And I was like, teach you? I don't know how to teach people. And she kept coming back because I kept telling her no. But she came back again. And I was like, you know what? I'm out here on this purpose journey with God. Let me take it to Him and see if maybe this is something He wants me to do. And I went in prayer and I said, God, this lady keeps asking me, what is this something you want me to do? And He said, yes, I want you to teach them the process I taught you. And I was like, is it going to work
What
for other people?
process?
Right. I was like, what process? 'Cause I'm just over here just journaling, okay?
I remember you
And
saying step 1, step 5. I
there
don't
was no
know.
steps, right? It was just
Process.
me. And
I was
so
just
she was
doing
like, what's
GS.
her
That could have been Girl Scouts. That could have been
that part?
Gorilla Stick. It could have been like
Look,
process. Get out of
glory
here.
shakers. I don't know what it meant.
Yeah.
Okay. And I found out GS actually meant God speaks. He told me that later. But and so I said to her, I said, hey, I got a yes. I don't know what this is gonna look like, but we can go for it. And she reached out to some of her friends, and it was my first class was 11 women. And I was like,
Wow.
we just gonna figure this thing out. And that's kind of how it, but I didn't get the name the Prayerpist until probably 2 years into it. Because literally it was a referral only business. Like people were referring people left and right. And my best friend, she was going through the process too. And she was like, Destiny, like literally what you're doing is therapy. She was like, but with prayer, she was like, I really think God is saying you should be the Prayerpist. And I was like, I hate that. Like that. And she was
That's a
like,
stupid name. Don't ever say that again.
it sounds stupid. And
Come
she's
on,
like,
bestie.
no, I think you should the Prayerpist. And to be honest, the reason why I didn't like it is because I felt like it was super controversial. Like, I'm not a licensed therapist. I don't want to see as I am. I know my
Yeah.
lane and I want to stay in my lane.
Sure.
Um, and I took it before the Lord, and He was like, "That's it." And it's trademarked and it's everywhere.
Oof.
But yeah, that's how it came about.
There's a couple of things there that I really want to highlight because so I coach coaches sometimes, and so I've got multiple businesses. One of the businesses I coach coaches. And what I see for them is not trusting the process. You know what I mean? They want to control the process because, again, it's that unknown is really scary. And so, what I hear from you is like this in 2017, you quit your job, and now it's 2024. So we're going on 7 years that it took to kind of, and there's another evolution, another evolution, another evolution. And what I know from my coaches is they want to go from 0 to 100, and have that guaranteed, and before they make any moves, which, because it's really scary for them. And you just was like, okay, I don't know where this is going, but I'm following. And
Mhm,
I and how did you let go? Because what I've heard you say is that you're a people pleaser and you're a control freak
mhm,
previously, right?
yeah.
And so there's a lot of stuff that has to happen in order for you just to let go and say, okay, I don't know what this looks like, but we're moving forward. How did that happen?
So, number one thing when I was in my corporate job, I used to pray all the time was God revealed to me my purpose. There's this void I feel that this is not it for my life. And I tell people every time I would pray that, I would be tested when it came to pleasing people. And I was like, maybe I'm praying the wrong prayer because I'm asking for purpose, but I always get tested here. Like I saw the pattern. I'm an analytic in data, so I find patterns really quick. And so I was like, there's something here. And so after it was revealed, the Lord was like, the reason why I kept testing you there because I could never reveal to you that you were called to be the therapist or to go to the next level until I dealt with your issue of people pleasing. So that was number one. And then number two was honestly, the Prayerpy process is what helped me because I was at this place where I'm like, okay, I know for sure it's him. It's tested now at this point because I through following you and through doing the process, I got a child out of it, and that's one thing I thought I couldn't get. And so
Yeah.
at this point, I know I'm out here literally all alone, and if I can go to a corporate job and get rules and regulations from a supervisor, I have to let you be my supervisor and be willing to do it for you. So that was really what it was like. Okay, we out here.
And I love that you said, you just went live and you had no, because a lot of my coaches have this fear of being seen on social media of like, well, I go live and then what? I push
Mhm.
live and then what happens? And I'm like, I don't know. Make
Mhm.
something happen. Even if you're talking to yourself, talk to, like, people are there. Like, how did you get to that process? Because you said it was like nobody, and then you just skyrocketed. So how did you get through those first couple of like ain't nobody there, times when you're like, I'm talking to myself and I feel really dumb, and prime real estate for self-sabotage right there, right? Prime real estate to go, oh, well, nobody was there. That means my voice isn't important. Let me not do this again. How did you get through that to continue on?
Well, I had a little bit of a cheat code because I did come from multi-level marketing. So I
True.
was taught that there. Now in multi-level marketing, how did I get started? It really was I am naturally a person, tell me what to do and I'll do it. And so they told us in order to be successful, you had to go live. Okay, I'm not gonna fight the coach because I am under you in some way because you know more than I do, right? So that would be the number one thing. But when it came to this, because this was a whole new arena for me, I literally pressed live and said, I don't know why I'm here. I don't know what I'm doing. I said this, I have the first live I ever did, so I have it. And I was like, I don't know why I'm here. I don't know what I'm doing. And I don't know what is going to come from this, but I know this is what God told me to do. So if anybody has any prayer requests, put them in the chat. Like that's the other thing I would say that really was helpful is I turned off the comments until I would like you can turn them on and off like when you're doing business, not for live prayer, but turning off the comments until you get accustomed to kind of, being up there. But the reality is you're not going to get to the future until you start somewhere. Everybody has to start somewhere. So just put yourself out there and know that the people that are called to you will only find you if your voice is being put out there, right? Like,
Yeah.
of course, the first live, maybe nobody's up there, maybe one person's up there, but the reality is, like I said, I'm a data analysis person. I like to actually study successful people. That's something I've always been into. And there's no successful person that I've studied at this point that will tell you that consistency isn't a piece of the successful puzzle. You have to be consistent. It's not that they showed up one day or somebody put them on. The reality is they were consistent enough before the person found them so that the person had data to prove that they could do the job. And so somebody just said in a meeting I was in the other day, how dare you call yourself a speaker? But if I go on your social media page or look you up, I don't see you speaking anywhere. How are you a speaker? So even if it's a live video, I gotta find you somewhere.
Yeah, I love that you said that of like all the famous people. There's nobody out there that doesn't say consistency is key. I mean, that's across the board, consistent, consistent, consistent. And what I want to remind people is that we didn't see Tony Robbins' first live. We didn't see his first speaking gig. We didn't see his first foray into coaching, right? And being the powerhouse that he is. We see the results, but we compare our initial steps to his result and go, oh, there's no way. Well, how do you know? How do you know if you don't show up? Show up and show up and show up until. So what do you want? Do you want to create an impact? Do you want to be a coach? Do you want to have your first workshop have 11 people in it? Well, that takes some legwork. That takes some legwork and consistency. And if you are afraid to be seen, I don't know how you're ever going to create impact. And I say that with a lot of love. I say that with so much love. But in this day and age, if you are not willing to be seen, I don't know how you're going to get to that impact level that you want so desperately for yourself.
Absolutely. And the reality is people buy people. They don't buy products and services.
Right.
Me going live really showed people my character. It showed people my integrity. It showed people that I don't make excuses. Because there was sometimes, like right now, I had a baby. My whole house was just sick. But I was like, I scheduled this. I'm going to show up. And if we have to reschedule, then we'll do that. But I put my name on that form. So I'm going to show up. Right. And so people buy people. People want to know that before I transfer services for my money that I sat in a job or showed up to sessions for, or whatever the case may be, and give it to you, that you're going to do the right thing with it. And the only way they will know that is if you showed up, if they know a face with your services or, depending on what you offer. But for a coach, yes, I definitely didn't need to know your morals and values before I'm giving you my money.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that you said that because people buy outcomes and then they buy the people selling the outcomes. And more often it's the people first, then the outcomes, because I want to know that you're going to be a good steward of my vulnerability.
Absolutely.
right? Because that's scary to lay yourself bare in front of somebody and go, this is what my life looks like, and I don't want it to look like this anymore. And
Mm-hmm.
how can you help me? And nobody wants to get on a call, even if it's a one-on-one call with somebody, and say, my life's a disaster.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody, that's hard. That's
Very hard.
hard. To say, oh, financially, I'm in the hole by $60,000, or I'm on the verge of a divorce for the third time, or, whatever that is. I beat the crap out of myself in my head so badly that then I go and I emotionally, and now I'm 150 pounds overweight. Whatever that is, it
Mm-hmm.
is so hard to say. And so people want to know that you're going to be a good steward of their dark secrets.
Yeah.
And if you do not show up and lay yourself bare,
Mm-hmm.
right, then people don't know that you're going to be a good steward. If you're not a good steward to your own dark secrets and share that with the world, then that doesn't make you a safe place for
Mm-hmm.
anybody else. And so talk about that process of like laying yourself bare in front of people that you've never met, because I'm sure it was super uncomfortable the first few times, right? And I'm sure some days when you get another level, right, when you elevate again, it gets uncomfortable again. I know that to be true for myself. What about you?
Absolutely. So, um, I found that my business is only as successful as my level of vulnerability. And
Ooh, I
let's
love
be
that.
clear, not telling people all your business. There's a very thin line there, right? Vulnerability in itself is just authenticity, right? It's being authentic. It's saying, hey, I can relate to you because I may not be going through what you went through, but I went through something similar, right? And it's giving the background that says that. And so for me, it what is so profound is I did a vision board going into 2018. So it was for 2017. And or maybe it was 2016 going into 2017. And one of the biggest words on the vision board was vulnerability. And I kept hearing, this will be the most vulnerable you've ever been in your life. And
You're
then
like,
I got
great,
led
sign
to
me
live
up.
and I was a
Awesome.
person who literally lived by the motto, what happens behind closed doors stays behind closed doors. Like that's what was ingrained in me growing up. Like you don't need to let people know your business. Even if you were just crying, wipe yourself up and walk in that room like you weren't, right? And
I
so
know that's true about like BIPOC, culture. That's very true of like, we don't tell nobody nothing unless they're
nothing.
in the family. And then even then, people get to know bits of what they need to know. And that's
Because your
it.
own family will use it against you, so you don't even probably share that with them.
For sure. For sure. So
So
vulnerability, you were like, awesome, I'm there.
I'm like, do I want to get in this vehicle or not? Right. And so
Uh,
then I started doing live prayer and there was no way to mask, right? Like you're like these people are coming up here asking you to pray for things that will immediately have you emote and cry and because you can feel well, I could feel what they were feeling. And so that was like the most naked you could possibly ever be. But I knew that I was there on assignment and that it was bigger. That's something that would ring all the time. This is bigger than you. This is bigger than you can imagine. And so, so yeah, being vulnerable is really about being relatable, like the same way the majority of those most intimate things that you purchase because their story, you purchase because of how, why they started, things like that. That's what people want to see from you. They want to know, why did you start this? Why are you passionate about this? Why are you going to really help me when you wake up in the morning and may not feel like helping me?
ooh, I love that. Yeah, because we all have those days,
We all,
right? We
right?
all have the, as much as I love coaching, some days I don't even feel like adulting,
Mhm.
let alone holding space for somebody else. So yeah, I love that. Why are you again going to be a good steward of my
Mhm.
story? when you don't feel like showing up that day for whatever reason. I think that that's really important for people to hear as far as coaches go, and for them to understand about their potential clients is they just want to know that you are going to be a good steward of what they're about to tell you and be able to guide them through it. Because like you said, you feel their emotions when they're sharing their story. And it doesn't matter. I don't know about you, but for me, when I really get into like the really dark stuff, I still cry. I still emote. I still have a lot of feelings about my past trauma because it was effing hard. It was effing hard. And the last thing I need to worry about for myself is when I'm telling it is how I look. Because if I worry about how I am physically appearing, I will shut down and that story will not be told. And there is growth that happens when hard stories are told in safe places. There's growth for the person that tells it. There's the growth for the person that witnesses it. And yeah, I love that you said that because I think it's super important for people to hear. Talk about the process. I want to know, like briefly, I'm not telling you to give away your secret sauce. You could if you wanted, but what are the 6 steps to Prayerpy?
So in actual like one-on-one sessions, it's a little bit more in depth, but the session, they're an hour. And it starts with what we like to, well, I open up with prayer. I pray for you. And then we start with the venting portion. And that's where you literally come and you just literally talk about what's going on, whether it's in your relationships, your money, whatever. I literally say, whatever you feel led to talk about that. And as the client is speaking, I will be taking notes. And it's not notes on what they're saying, but the Holy Spirit will start giving me deeper insight. So you may say something like, lately, I've just been feeling like I'm a burden to everybody. I have no one to lean on. I'm the strong friend to everybody. And the Lord may say something like that's intentional, that you're people pleasing and that you're a pillow, right? And a pillow, that's a code we have when he says you're a pillow, it means you're someone that as people are having their rock bottom moment, you always come in as a pillow to save them and wonder why you're not receiving what God has for you, but it's because you're misaligned. You're always back here helping someone when he wants you to be here, right?
Yeah, the pillow is not a great thing. It sounds it's not a great it's not being a pillow is not a great thing in this instance.
It's not a good thing. It's literally someone who has a savior like complex, right? And so we'll kind of talk through those things as he's giving them to me. And we identify the root of those things. Why do you act that way? And then towards the end, we do the journaling technique. And so the journaling technique is the 6-step process, and that's where you do your venting portion to God, or you create the atmosphere and you begin to vent out your feelings, but you're asking at a deeper level. A lot of prayer today is very surface level, but you are in a pattern and you don't know why. So, for example, you may be praying like, for me to be able to pay my rent. But the reality is this is your 6th bad relationship in the last 8 months. You should be asking God, what on the common denominator? What are the things you're trying to teach me about myself here? Right?
And quit paying for those broke boys' toys. That's what I'm saying. That's why you can't pay your rent.
That part.
Quit dating those broke boys. I might be speaking to myself. I don't know.
Mamas, okay? So I give you questions or prompts to pose, and we journal together though. And so they take those questions and journal them out. And whatever your immediate thought is when you ask the question, you write that down. Not what you want to overthink, but your immediate thought. So, for example, I had a client some years ago where she asked God, reveal to me when the seed of rejection was planted. And she immediately started seeing images of a hospital room. And what happened is she was originally a twin, but the other twin didn't make it. And the other twin was a boy, and her parents wanted a boy. And so immediately that's where the seed of rejection was planted, because they were excited that she made it, but she wasn't the son, right? And so it's those deep things that are ingrained in us. And even our parents begin to respond and they don't realize they're responding to us that way. And that is the seed that then is bad relationships, bad friendships, bad teachers, And so we do that, and then we ask questions like, based on this information and based on how this has affected previous relationships, what are keywords or what are signs that let me know this is I'm being triggered here? And so I have another client where she went and she said, what's a key word that I would hear when I know I'm overcompensating? And it was the word grace. And literally she would be around friends. Ever since this session, she would be around friends or something. And when she would be overcompensating, she would hear somebody would randomly like, today I heard give myself grace. And she's like, oh my gosh. Like, so it's those things that that are brought to the forefront. And so while they're journaling, I'm also journaling for them. And so we read our entries at the end to see if there's any similarities. And they're literally like mirrors. And so they're like, oh my
Wow.
gosh, I do hear God speaking to me. This is him telling me that I'm doing too much or whatever. So it's like it's multifaceted because it builds your confidence in your ability to hear from God. It identifies some self-sabotaging seeds, but then also you have execution. You have how do I stop doing this? So that's how the sessions go.
Yeah, once you here's here's a test, my friends. If you have gathered some new information lately about life, and then you continue to do the old patterns that you've always continued to do, now that's a choice.
Yep.
Now that's a choice. I'm not saying it's an easy choice. I'm not saying that, but now it's a choice because you have this information of what life could look like if things were different. Yeah, and you have this is how you go. This is where you go. These are the first steps. And then you choose to fall back into old patterns. That's a choice. It's a choice. And again, it's because the unfamiliar is scary. And the familiar, no matter how effed up it is familiar. That doesn't mean it's healthy. It doesn't mean it's good for you, and it doesn't mean it's going to get you where you want to go. So if you have these patterns that are, or if you've got this goal that you want, let's say you're a chef and you want your own restaurant one day. Okay, great. That's the goal. And now you see in your patterns that, the stress level that you're carrying now, and maybe you're drinking with the crew because that's chef life, and maybe you're staying out too late and you're not really protecting your energy in ways that you should, so you don't have the energy to move forward to get that own restaurant, right? So now it's a choice. Now you know that your energy is being drained by the activities that you're doing, and so you can either continue to do those activities and just wish, or you can do the not so fun thing and protect your energy for the bigger purpose, right? And so once you have that information and you continue in old patterns, then it's a choice. Destiny, what has surprised you? Maybe what's the biggest surprise out of this journey that you've been on for the last 7+ years? Besides the kids, obviously.
That part.
Obviously, that part, right?
That part. So much because from the program, which is known as Purposeful Prayer, now then we got into Prayerpy sessions one-off, and now I actually also host retreats from that. And we take them internationally. So we just came actually back from Bali. I think I think as a creative, the wildest thing to me is that something that was written in my journal one day, years ago, is now tangible. It's like real life. But more importantly that that when you just start, when you just I did not know what I was doing. And I think we spend so much time feeling like we need all the answers. But the majority of my journey was, and this is why I believe in coaches, because I probably could have saved some time if I would have had a coach in the beginning. But it was really like, this is what he said to do, go do it. And it came to life, so but for me, it's literally the amount of lives that have been touched and change. Like I cry. I just started my most recent PFP class on Thursday, and I was crying before it started because it was just like, wow, like to
Wow.
see women who battled infertility, who went through my program that now have multiple kids, people who thought they would never own a house, people who, never thought they would be an entrepreneur or have a business, be able to do that from something that literally was birthed in my darkest moment.
Yeah.
Is wow.
Oof.
But it makes me
That
look at
probably.
my storms completely differently too. It's like, okay, may be painful, this may hurt, but what are you trying to birth out of this? Because I think about labor now, right? And it's like, and I had my last two natural, no meds. And so it's
Ooh,
like,
girl, you're a superhero. Ooh,
when the pain gets the worst is when you're almost at the end. And so
that's true.
that's how my perspective is now, because I see what was birthed in, like, I know how dark I was then. I know how bad it was. I know how there were moments that I was like, what's the point of living if I'm a woman and can't give my husband a child? I know that. And I've never been someone who was dealt with suicidal ideations, but that's how dark it got sometimes, because everyone around you is having a baby and you're like, what did I do so wrong?
Yeah,
So yeah. I know that was a
I
long answer
love
to
that.
a short question, but
No,
yeah.
no, no, no. It's perfection. It's perfection because I love the birth analogy because it's true, and right next to it's always darkest right before the dawn as well. Ooh, I'm getting chills. This is amazing. Destiny, tell people where they can find you if they want to work with you, what that looks like. Give them all the deets because I know somebody watching this needs you.
Absolutely. So I can be found anywhere under the Prayerpist. You can also find me under Realizing Destiny. Both are trademarks, so they're attached to me in all ways, shapes, or form. But my company is Realizing Destiny LLC, but my DBA is the Prayerpist. So if you search Realizing Destiny or the Prayerpist, I come up. And like I said, I offer sessions. I offer a group program. The group program is closed. I only offer that once a year. And I offer retreats. And we're going to Africa this year, so that should be fun.
Oh my gosh. Bali, Africa, amazing, amazing. You guys, all of her stuff will be below in the description. So go check her out. Please, 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 please do. Life does not have to look like it does right now. So if you are in a dark time, if you are just questioning why, and she resonates with you, go look her up. So, Destiny, thank you for you and Mini Me joining us. I'm so, so grateful that you had her on here as well to prove, right, that life can look different than what you thought it would years ago. You thought that you thought your destiny was written. You
Yes,
thought it was
ma'am.
done. You thought that's it. I will never be more than I am right now. And
Mhm.
it is so not true. You've got that third little baby just so beautifully snoozing in your lap. So that's just proof. You guys do all the YouTubey things, please. Like, subscribe, follow, hit that bell. And yeah, leave a comment below if you have anything for Destiny. I will absolutely relay that, or maybe she'll come and answer in the comments. And yeah, thank you again for joining us. We really appreciate it. You guys, I just want to remind you, it literally takes just a few short minutes a day to rewire your brain for a more positive life, and Destiny and that little girl right there are absolute proof of this. She just wrote in her journal with no end goal, with no direction other than just trying to feel better, and look now where she is. So I love you. Thank you for being here, and I'll see you guys next time.
Thank you.